The division of the British Empire on August 15, 1947, gave place to the creation of two states, India and Pakistan, but at the same time has set the basis for confrontations based on religious and ethnic differences. The core point where in the geography is those differences are expressed as Kashmir, that in these days has become once again a place of dispute. India and Pakistan have been struggling for the last 70 years in this point. And this history of attacks, there seems not to be any point of approach. And this is a matter of concern because each one has at least one decisive power in the game. Who or what could reduce tensions? What is the origin of this dispute? We have explained in other shows how valuable is the zone disputed by two countries for 7 decades. Irregular groups could advance and become new terrorist groups in Asia and even affect Europe. Is this a nuclear challenge? India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers at the brink of a new war. This is our critical move today. We will show news, facts, and actors involved. In the last month, a spiral of violence has been unleashed that started on February 14, when members of Jaish-e-Mohammed perpetrated a terrorist assault in a zone of Kashmir controlled by India. More than 40 soldiers of the Reserve Police of India died as a result of that attack. India accused Pakistan of having financed this act. It first canceled the most favored nation clause it had since 1996 to purchase products with low tariffs. As a result of that decision, they have now 200% rate tariffs. Since January 20, the Indian soldiers entered camp control with Pakistan, and this ended in 2 Indian aircraft brought down. We don't want to enter in war with India, but if in case of any aggression, it will not surprise us. We will defend each centimeter of our country. Friends, when the enemy tries to unstabilize India, it performs a terrorist attack. One of the goals is that our speed, progress in our country to stop. In view of this, each Indian should remain as a wall, as a rock, to show them this country, its progress and speed will not stop. In the chronology of facts, we identify an apparent gesture of peace. The Islamabad government's return of Indian pilot. I was trying to look for the target when I was attacked by the Pakistani Air Force. When my parachute opened, I had a gun. The Pakistani army has been very professional and peaceful. I spent time with them, and I'm very impressed. I tried to run, and people came after me. Their emotions were hot at that time, but the officials did not allow the people to attack them. They took me to first aid. Small territory, it was a prince kingdom, is the origin of the dispute between India and Pakistan, but also an essential element for the beginning of new relations and a challenge of 2 nuclear powers. We will go to the map. Kashmir, or Kashmir Valley, is a region located in the north part of the Indian continent. In the Himalayan mountains, in the northeast it has Afghanistan, to the east it has China, southeast Pakistan, and South India. Its population is approximately 13 million people, 80% Muslim, and the other 20% is Hindu. It is considered a significantly beautiful zone with important water reserves. It's fertile and it's surrounded by a mountain range, and it is also a dispute zone divided between Pakistan Pakistan, India, and China. India administers 43% of area, the central and southern areas, Jammu and Kashmir. Pakistan controls 37% northern territories and Azad Kashmir. And China 20%, remaining 20%, the northeastern zone, Xaitin, and the Jaskan Valley. In Kashmir, there are sectors that claim for independence. Islamabad and New Delhi set the control line, a military border not internationally recognized, divided on the 1st of January 1949 as a ceasefire line. Later, in July 3, 1972, there were changes made, the Simla Agreement. The losses, this line crosses a mountain range of around 5,000 meters above sea level. In the last years, 70,000 people have died. We have reviewed Sputnik news agency that on March 6th, yesterday, published there will be consequences for Pakistan for using Kaza F-16 against India. Well, India accuses Pakistan of using U.S. Kaza F-16. In the sales contract, there are limitations to speed. The president of Imagindia Institute declared that at present the United States only requested a standard report it usually asks in case of suspected undue use of its weapons. In any case, no contract was published, and the author of this note wonders, together with the Indian president, wonder, could the United States adopt punitive measures or its regular sanctions against Pakistan? This is the question. I'll go to Al-Majadin in Spanish that yesterday published Pakistan seeks dialogue with India and wants peace in the region. Pakistani Minister of Foreign Affairs Shah Mahmood said that they want peace and that they are willing to start a dialogue. It also says that Antonio Guterres, General Secretary of the United Nations, has called the parties to reduce tensions. The spokesman of United Nations, Stefan Dujarric, declared in New York that he is in contact at different levels with both countries to seek a solution to the conflict. We must remember that there is UN mediation and that several times there have been proposals of demilitarization in the zone without any result. Our recommendation today is the Spanish Strategic Study Institute, written by Ana Gómez Adeva, researcher, specialist in international law, and the title of her article is Kashmir, the most coveted region in Asia. On page 5 of the investigation, we find important data we would like to let you know. We see it here after numbering the different wars that have occurred, says, we must say that after centuries of British domain, Pakistan and India needed to settle as sovereign and independent states, and therefore they had to confront Kashmir issue without giving signs of weakness. The author says that this is a key to the matter because in Kashmir they not only measured their military forces, but also as independent nations. And this could explain what the author deems is the wish of both countries to take over the region. Later, she talks about the importance of the important water resources in Kashmir with rivers and the Indo River. In 1960, India and Pakistan signed a treaty on the Indo River that granted India rights on the Oriental, Hadam and Sufet River, and Pakistan had the western rivers, Indo, Jhelum, and Tenab. She provides very important data, and this is why we recommend you this article. We will incorporate other data, and we receive now Alto Shavari from Turkey. Greetings to all Telesur viewers. The disputes between India and Pakistan go way behind. In the last years, there has been a tense peace between both countries. Until last February 14th, after the attack in the conflicted zone of Kashmir, all alarms have went off. It left 40 people dead and dozens of wounded. India accuses Pakistan of sponsoring this terrorist attack in the Kashmir zones disputed by both countries. Pakistan denies all this and accuses India of using this terrorist attack in order to attack Pakistan. India has threatened Pakistan with an international blockade after what happened this last month, even if tensions are still living today in one of the most conflicted borders of the world. Military attacks between both countries have softened. It seems that the conflict between both nuclear powers will not stop by the time being, but could go to an economic level. Well, thank you. We will ask, and we will ask our analyst if India and Pakistan are thinking to confront in a new war because of Kashmir, and if so, what will be the international consequences? This is our first pause. India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers on the brink of a new war. This is our question and our critical move today. This dispute on the border, and in spite of truces and successive attempts to reach peace, is considered one of the most serious border problems because of the amount of deaths and its lack of resolution. It includes the separation of the land delimited by religious India, mostly Hindu, and Pakistan, mostly Muslim. That displaced 20 million people. We want to understand the origin of this rivalry to put in context. The same year of decolonization, 1947, the first war for Jammu and Kashmir started. Till then, majority Muslim and independent in spite of the law of India approved by the British Parliament. The governor of Arishin was Hindu, and because of his religion, he wanted to incorporate this territory to India and signed the document that turned the territory officially in one more part of India. This caused the tribes Pashtun of Pakistan, knowing that most in the territory were Muslim, carry out a silent invasion. This was the first of 4 Hindu-Pakistani wars. The Indian forces stopped the Pakistani advance, and the battle ended with the attack of Indian forces that had less deadly rate. After this first conflict, 60% of territory remained in Indian control and 40% in Pakistani control. 1965 came the Second War because of Islamabad's attempts to cause a riot in the Indian Kashmir part. The United States intervened, but without much result. In 1971, India used the same Pakistani tactic, and Pakistan supported independent movements. This new confrontation gave place to Bangladesh and Pakistani territories and forced the creation of a military border of more than 700 kilometers long that divides Jammu and Kashmir in part India and part Pakistani. At this point, things seemed irreconcilable. In 1979, Pakistani soldiers infiltrated the Indian part of the disputed region. This was the first war between both nations after both had developed nuclear weapons. It ended in 2003 with a ceasefire and with violations by both parties on several occasions. This year, hostilities reached an unprecedented point in 15 years. They had the opportunity to pass from conventional war to asymmetric war because of the different forces between Pakistan and India. TelesurTV.net published an article that says that Christian movement launched a campaign for ceasefire between India and Pakistan called Pray, Love, and for Peace. The members of this campaign said that the conflict should be avoided. In both nations, poverty is growing, and the number of people who are living under poverty levels is growing. These are the priorities that have to be given priority by both governors. We now go to the analysis. We have Engineer Alet Hindi, coordinator of the Latin American League in favor of the Palestinian return, and FEDA. If you agree, we will start for the geostrategic and geopolitics. Why is this zone so coveted after 70 decades of conflict? We know that Kashmir is a strategic zone both for India and Pakistan. But when colonialism leaves one country, it leaves problems behind in order to dominate, for the area to remain in conflict at all times and be easier to dominate. When India was decolonized in Pakistan, Kashmir remained in dispute. A war took place in 1947 between Pakistan and India to control Kashmir, and this led to 2 years of war where India won with less lower death toll and wounded people, but and control almost 60% of Kashmir. Now, Pakistan is always supporting separatist groups on Indian territory, and the same is done by India. Another war took place in 1965, the third in 1971, which was more serious. This war lasted 2 weeks with more than 10,000 death, people in between both parties, civilians and militaries, and this created a new state in Pakistan called Bangladesh. Since then, Pakistan is looking revenge to control or help the majority of the people in Kashmir that have Muslim origins. We know that Kashmir has Muslims, Hindus, and also Buddhists. We know that China controls one part of Kashmir, but China has a peaceful role there. It is not in war with anybody, but in the near future it also has an alliance with Pakistan, especially for the manufacturing of war aircraft, weapons, which is has taken a role to press over the Indian government. You say that colonialism always leaves problems behind. There are some authors we have been reading who say that the establishment of the border was not objective, and that when India and Pakistan were created as independent states. For example, Maria Teresa Ayala Stidman said that there are Muslim territories that were delivered to India because of geopolitical considerations, for example, water resources. And on the other hand, it's the Hindu majorities that took over Pakistan and Punjab, the ancestral land of the Sheikhs, and this was a hard coup for India. More than a solution to religious problems in this Indian peninsula, the creation of both states were the seed for these decades of conflict. Do you agree with this? Yes, the conflict was planted by colonialism. I could make a comparison. In 1947, they planted this conflict between India and Pakistan, as they did in the Middle East and Palestine. When they divided in 1947, the state of Palestine was divided in two parts between Arabs and Jews without consulting Palestinian people. And this conflict lives until now, survives until now. And who sponsored this? It was Great Britain. Great Britain does not want wealth being for the people. It is still a colonialist empire. Now, who wins in the Indian and Pakistani conflict? It is always Europeans and U.S. imperialism, because this conflict needs weapons, and this is provided by both for India and Pakistan, and an open market. It is now two powers. We're talking about India, 3 million soldiers, and almost 1 million Pakistani soldiers. If a war breaks out, it will be a completely destructive war. And do you think a new war is possible? The new facts exacerbate differences, but there have been statements aimed at dialogue, peace, and conciliation. We assume that each nuclear power is weighing both positive and negative consequences. What do you think could pass? Logic says that there will be no nuclear war because both countries would disappear with it. We assume there is between 250 and 300 nuclear heads between both countries. So a nuclear war would end with both countries. This is why I don't think there will be more war or confrontations in this conflict. India accused Pakistan of starting this conflict last month, but Pakistan rejected these accusations. Abraham Khan said that we consider the Prophet's army as a terrorist group, and it's banned in Pakistan. So they delivered the Hindu pilot that was captured, and this means that they don't want to scale up the war. It is time to stop the conflict, and we don't want to increase tensions in Kashmir, Jammu. We will use dialogue. There is a history. According to the concession of India in 1947, they allowed a referendum in Kashmir, Jammu. They should make elections again, and whoever wins, they would go to Pakistan, India, or become independent. What the Kashmir Jammu governor asked India's support to invade Kashmir and called in Jammu, and this was not possible. After this, I think that the Indian constitution says that Jammu Kashmir is part of India. They consider it so. Pakistan considers that the majority are Muslim and should belong to Pakistan. What has been well defined that Great Britain delivered Hindu territory to Pakistan and Pakistani territory to India for this conflict to be maintained until now. The conflict could also have economic consequences because one of the decisions that India took immediately after the attack on February 14 was to accuse Pakistan of promoting and financing that attack, withdrawing the most favored nation status with the preferential rates and increase them to 200%. But we also read news in Sputnik that says that the United States asked accounts from Pakistan to see if it used its weapons, Qaza F-16, because there are contractual obligations that could limit that use. The author of the Sputnik note wonders if the United States, through Congress or an executive decree, could impose punitive measures against Pakistan. What do you think? Yes, Pakistan has U.S. weapons. We know that. India has more Russian weapons and almost very few U.S. weapons and some French. But India used Sukhoi, MiG, Mirage, F-16, Qaza manufactured by Pakistan and China in this conflict. We know they have 8 airplanes of India against 16 airplanes of Pakistan. 2 Pakistani airplanes were destroyed. A pilot was captured and then it was surrendered to the authorities as an act of good faith. The United States is not interested in the welfare of Pakistan or India. They are interested in the conflict to continue. It has a destructive role. We talk about the Afghani conflict, who created Al-Qaeda, who financed and trained Al-Qaeda, and after Al-Qaeda, Taliban. So the United States is interested in the dispute to continue in Kashmir. Of course, they also are interested in weakening both military countries and that they destroy each other. The United States created Al-Qaeda, now Islamic State, and the Prophet's army that is also a terrorist group that operates in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, under different names. These groups, unfortunately, are used by the United States to unstabilize any region around the world. I hope that those groups stop operating around the world, especially in the border between Colombia and Venezuela, because this affects us. And we know that many Islamic State groups in Syria were captured and transferred to some unknown places, and we hope it is not Colombia that has 9 military bases and could operate against the people of Venezuela. Talking about the Kashmir and Pakistan conflict, we have no other thing than ask for peace for both nations, because they have the same origins in the past. They are seeking their self-determination and well-being for both peoples. We cannot ask for war because that would be the end of both countries as nuclear powers. Professor, talking about what you just said, we want to keep analyzing this with the positions of China, Russia, and the United States. Could the new Silk Route of China could affect this conflict because it crosses Pakistan? Why United Nations always fails in a different attempt throughout history, and what role could the Shanghai Cooperation Organization play? We'll be back after this pause. India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers on the brink of a new war. The relation between Pakistan and India as powers, with the United States, China, Russia, and other countries like Iran, have not been stable in time. For example, after Pakistan was a historic U.S. ally, now it has a geostrategic iron alliance with China, with a military and defensive agreement to contain terrorist groups of Islamic State and to develop new nuclear initiatives. The United States strengthened its bond with Pakistan when the Soviet Union advanced on Pakistan in the late 80s. Washington saw in Pakistan an ally to stop the Soviet advance and provided with a large amount of weapons and men. In 2018, Donald Trump reduced the aid and security to Pakistan because he said he does not combat terrorism enough. The truth is that Pakistan changed its foreign affairs policy in that year. The Iranian president signed a defense agreement with Pakistan, and at the same time, Pakistan entered the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, where Xi Jinping stated that China will defend that country against any attack against its independence. Both countries signed important agreements in infrastructure matters. Indian positions have also been diverse. On one hand, it has excellent commercial links with the United States. As an example, in the United States has 186,000 Indian students, but New Delhi also has strong bonds with Russia and is an important customer of Iranian oil. This is a matter of concern for the United States, and someone's behind New Delhi and Washington signed a 2+2 agreement for military matters, whereby in 2019 Trump's administration will provide $18 billion for defense to India in exchange of not purchasing oil to Iran or weapons to Russia. Nevertheless, Mike Pompeo stepped back and finally said they would not impose those conditions. India answered that it will keep agreements with Russia and Iran. 70% of its weapons was purchased to Putin and will pay $6 billion to Russia for its S-400 defense system, one of the most powerful in India. 2 days ago, Trump declared that it will withdraw India from its preferential countries. We continue talking about with engineer Alec Hindi, coordinator of the Latin American League for Palestinian Return and member of many Arab leagues in Venezuela. I would like to talk about the turn between Pakistan and China and U.S. relations. Pakistan has good relations with China. As I said, in the military field, it has joint manufacturing, developed weapons. We know that China, India, and Pakistan are nuclear powers. China is interested also in the Silk Route, infrastructure from China to the sea. So at present, it takes a long time to transport products from the world to China. So that route has costed many billions of dollars to China, but they have agreements with mutual aid agreements whereby both benefit from these agreements. So India also has very good relations with the United States. The United States see in India counterweight. They relate with India. They want to help it versus Pakistan and China, but under some conditions, one of which is in order to continue the embargo the United States is attempting against Iran. We know that for the United States, Iran is enemy number one in the Middle East against U.S. and Zionist Israeli interests. We know they work together, and they want to block Iran and keep it from having technology. In spite of the embargoes Iran has developed and resorted to India. The United States wants to stop India from purchasing oil from Iran, but we know that India is a sovereign nation that rejects these conditions in exchange of some benefit from the United States. We know that the United States will not help India for free. They will sell weapons to India, but under conditions that they cannot be used other than for a war in two countries. I will not say armed countries, but neighbor countries that should live in peace. What about Turkey? Turkey also has interests, and we know that Erdogan, since he came to power, he's always talking of year 2023, where a treaty will end. This treaty was executed in 1923 when the Allies won the First World War and the Ottoman Empire disappeared from the map. They set conditions to Turkey, and this agreement said that in 100 years Turkey cannot exploit or explore oil in its own territory. This is why Erdogan is talking about the approach of year 2023 when this humiliating treaty will end. Turkey is seeking its benefits and is discussing with Iran for an understanding. We know that Iran was also had problems with Pakistan because of the terrorist attack last year. Iran says that they declared that they knew that secret services of Iran are infiltrated by terrorist groups that use Pakistani secret services in their benefit. This also disturbs India. India has some reasons in this aspect, but since Iran has many more, each country of the Middle East, of the Far East, is looking for its own benefits, and an understanding to live in peace and develop economically. Why has United Nations failed in its repeated attempts? The United States always has a pressure from some powers, especially the United States, Great Britain. We're not talking about France because France doesn't have much weight in the place where Pakistan, India, China. But we know that Great Britain is a colonial country that dominated that zone and is always seeking, since it had interest in those lands through conflicts, wars, and this is what the United States is also seeking. A market for its weapons and products. These countries kill each other, but they are backed by the United States. And this Shanghai Cooperation Organization, of which Pakistan and India are members, could be a decisive role. I think that Russia is interested, and China also is interested in having peace in Pakistan because it benefits the countries and also does not give an excuse to the United States to interfere in foreign affairs. These are sovereign nuclear countries that should be respected, but also large countries should stop interfering in other countries' internal matters. The Shanghai Group could play an appeasing role for the countries to reach an understanding. Kashmir journalist, founder and editor of the Kashmir Wala, Fahad Shah, assures there is a struggle of power in the south of Asia and quotes a military that says that China is this was conspiring this Silk Road in this ambitious project of China. Yes, this corridor is very important for China. It will save time for products to arrive from Middle East to China through this Pakistani hub that China is financing. But could that economic belt be affected? This is the wish of the United States and Great Britain to affect it, because pressure on China will weaken it. We know that U.S. imperialism in European countries sometimes use pressure on some countries. An example that affected Venezuela with low oil prices. A war against Russia, against Syria was not the issue. It attempted to end with the Arab Syrian government that was supported by Iran and Russia. Iran and Russia are powers that export oil. So the United States led its slaves in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia and the countries in the Persian Gulf, to produce more oil and for prices to fall. This means that Iran and Russia will stop supporting the Arab Syrian government. But this also affected Venezuela because of the low prices. And led to this, the economic problems we have in Venezuela. The United States is always seeking to block some country and create conflict there. And this is a very important route for China, and I don't think it's a low-quality power. It's the world's second nuclear power that can also defend its interests in the zone. Are you optimistic or pessimistic of what could happen? I am optimistic that the Indian and Pakistani governments will sit to the table in dialogue because they are both peoples and governments are interested in peace. And many countries are aware of what is happening and will press for that conflict to keep that conflict from extending, including Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, that also have interests in appeasing the zone and avoid conflicts. Thank you very much for attending.
Hasta pronto. Ha sido un placer tenerle acá. Despedimos a nuestro invitado, ingeniero Alet Hindi, coordinador de la Liga Latinoamericana por el Retorno a Palestina,
coordinator of the Latin American League for the Palestinian Return, and member of several Arab associations. We now go to our conclusions. Undoubtedly, this is a hot spot on the planet that's a matter of concern because it has been a constant spot. Now, future is uncertain in that strategic place at the foot of the Himalayas mountain range, the northern part of India, a conflict that has its origin in religious and nationalist groups that in a place and that is functional to the U.S. interests, and that is why they are providing weapons in order to contain Chinese power that is growing. China is the first nation that is threatened, and why it is interested in neutralizing these problems. The actors have nuclear powers, and therefore a war would be a destruction of both nations and affect the neighbors. What we discussed with our guest, the Chinese economic route that will connect China with the Gwadar port in the Indian Ocean near Karachi, Pakistan. This is the end of our critical move. We will continue watching over these facts. That is one of our critical moves of Telesur.